we're going to unpack something absolutely fascinating. We are doing a deep analysis into the exact biological reality of what happens inside your brain the very moment you die. It's a topic that's captivated humanity for millennia, but you know what? It's only recently that neuroscientists have actually captured the data to show us what's really going on under the hood in those final critical moments.
I want you to reconsider your deepest assumptions right now. When you think about the moment the heart stops, what do you picture? Most of us just assume it goes dark, right? Like flipping off a light switch, a system simply powering down. But the data tells us a completely different story. The dying brain definitely doesn't just fade to black, and the implications of what it actually does change how we understand what you are while you're alive.
Okay, let's dive into this and walk through the strict biological time frame of that first minute of death. At 0 seconds, your heart stops, blood pressure in your brain drops to 0, and oxygen delivery halts entirely. All 86 billion of your neurons suddenly begin running out of fuel at the same time. But right at the 15-second mark, we see a massive surge. Then at 20 seconds, surface consciousness is lost, and finally at 60 seconds, the EEG flatlines. It looks like a standard countdown, but the activity hiding inside this timeline is just staggering.
The 2013 Michigan study, Expecting Silence, Finding a Storm. To understand that 15-second surge, we have to look at what researchers found in rats undergoing cardiac arrest. They fully expected to record a system quietly winding down, but instead, the exact moment each rat's heart stopped, its brain actually lit up. They called this phenomenon synchronized coherence. And this isn't just random, chaotic firing. This is a simultaneous, global surge of gamma waves across the entire brain. Gamma waves are the brain waves associated with peak focus, heightened perception, and conscious processing. So at the exact moment the body underneath it is actively dying, every part of the brain suddenly starts speaking the exact same language all at once. The 2022 human EEG, an accidental discovery. For almost a decade, scientists wondered if this was just a weird quirk in rats. That is, until an 87-year-old human patient accidentally proved that our brains do the exact same thing. What's really interesting here is that even after the heart stopped and blood flow completely ceased, game activity actually increased and cross-frequency coupling remained active. When we deeply analyze exactly where this activity happens, the EEG points straight to the posterior cortical hot zone. This is the very specific region your brain uses for dreaming, for visual consciousness, and literally for assembling your unified sense of self. It's deeply unsettling, but also deeply fascinating to realize that the very center responsible for constructing you is firing at absolute peak levels right after blood flow has completely stopped. The 2023 NYU Langone study, Validating the Experience. To ground this bizarre neurological phenomenon in actual clinical human data, Dr. Sam Parnia led the largest study of its kind ever conducted, tracking 567 cardiac arrest patients across 25 hospitals in the US and the UK. The statistics from the study are absolutely wild. An astounding 40% of these survivors showed brain activity returning to normal, or at least near normal, during CPR. And this wasn't just in the immediate seconds after cardiac arrest. This brain activity was sustained or recovered up to an entire hour after cardiac arrest began. The brain is just incredibly resilient, fighting tooth and nail to maintain its networks. And here is where the data gets deeply personal. 4 in 10 of those survivors actually recalled some degree of consciousness during the period they were clinically dead. We aren't talking about vague impressions or fuzzy dreams here. They reported lucid, highly coherent experiences that happened while their hearts were completely stopped and they were actively being resuscitated. The most common lucid experience reported was the panoramic life review. Now, this is not a chaotic flood of random memories. Patients described a highly structured, organized replay of their lives. Key moments, major decisions, and significant people were presented in a very clear sequence, with deep emotional weight attached to every single one. It's a vivid internal reality assembled entirely from the architecture of your own mind. And this brilliantly illustrates the electrical storm hypothesis, which is the dominant scientific explanation for how this happens. As oxygen gets cut off, neurons desperately begin firing uncontrollably in a last-ditch electrical storm. This discharge cascades across the brain, activating memory systems and emotional centers all at once. The results? This incredibly vivid, compressed, and entirely internally generated experience. But while this internal storm is raging, the brain is actually shutting down its external connections in a very specific, strict sequence. First to go is vision, because the rods and cones in your retina are incredibly oxygen hungry. The color literally drains away and the world compresses. Next goes your sense of touch, then spatial awareness. But notice that very last step.
Hearing is the absolute last sense to go. The auditory cortex desperately hangs on longer than almost any other system. And this has a massive practical application. It's exactly why medical staff are explicitly trained to speak carefully and respectfully around patients who look totally unconscious and unresponsive, because the dying brain might very well still be listening and processing those words long after the body can physically respond.
So the crucial point is this. Right around 20 seconds after cardiac arrest, you lose surface consciousness. This is the exact moment most people picture when they think about death. The person appears gone, it's lights out. But as we've seen from all this internal data, the brain is absolutely not gone. It's doing something incredibly measurable and coherent just beneath the surface.
And to add a profound neurochemical layer to this deeply complex internal reality, a 2019 Michigan study found that naturally occurring DMT actually spikes in the brain at the exact moment of cardiac arrest. DMT is a compound famous for producing experiences that feel even more real than ordinary reality, things like encounters with presences, geometric light, and the dissolving of the self. The fact that it spikes right at cardiac arrest, that's a staggering piece of the puzzle. The 60-second mark, the clinical flat line. Around 60 seconds after circulation stops, the EEG officially flatlines. Electrical activity basically ceases. This is the clinical marker most doctors use to define death. But our analysis shows this is absolutely not the end of the biological process.
Let's see how this builds a completely new understanding of mortality. The old model viewed death as a strict line. You hit that 60-second flat line, and it's over. But the new reality shows death as a gradient. It's a slow unwinding. Skin cells literally remain viable for hours. And remarkably, a 2019 Yale study actually restored cellular activity in pig brains 4 whole hours after decapitation. Death isn't a simple switch, it's a fading gradient.
But hey, despite all this incredible data, the gamma surges, the DMT spikes, the gradient of cell death, the scientists remain incredibly humble. The authors of the NYU Langone study explicitly stated, the evidence neither proves nor disproves the reality of what these patients experienced. We can measure the surge all day long, but science still cannot tell us what it actually feels like to be inside that brain in those final seconds.
So, what does this all mean? I want to leave you with a profound, lingering question to end our explainer today. When that highly organized electrical coherence sweeps across the dying brain, is the panoramic life review just a desperate neurological hallucination built by an oxygen-starved organ? Or, as the brain completely shuts out the external world and lights up its deepest centers, is it experiencing something else entirely? If the experts aren't certain, well, maybe the most honest answer is that none of us should be either. Thanks for joining me on this one. It's been an incredible ride.